Hello, I'm Ion Politics reporter Jack Fink. The one and only vice presidential debate on CBS News is now in the history books, and Republican Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio and Democratic Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota faced off on a number of key issues where they have major differences. And here to discuss the debate is Democrat Jr. Ezeonu, a political consultant and deputy mayor pro tem for the city of Grand Prairie, and Republican Michael Williams, a former Texas Railroad Commissioner and former Texas Education Agency Commissioner. Welcome to both of you to Ion Politics. Thank you so much. And so a lot of people are talking about how substantive and civil this debate was. Michael, we'll start with you. What is your main takeaway from this debate?
It was both that. It was civil, it was respectable. But last night, I'll start the way I ended in our last conversation. Last night was a old-fashioned, I can't say it the way I want to because I'm on TV, but it was an old-fashioned behind whooping that Senator Vance gave to Governor Walz.
Why did you think
The
that?
only difference was you didn't do what my grandmother would say, go out to the tree and get a switch and bring you back in and whoop you, or do what Sister Leonardine did to us at St. Anne's Catholic School, or what Brother John did when I was in boarding school.
Why did you think it was so decisive?
The reason was he was poised, he had passion, he could make an argument clearly with starting with the main issue and then going down with the facts and the data, and he was relatable and likable. And for people, for both of them, because Americans did not know who they were, it was a good thing for him to be likable and relatable, and surely a good thing for him to be able to make a clear, cogent case to support the president. And then, as I said in our last conversation, to wrap a rope around the vice president and the Biden administration.
Junior, what were your thoughts? What was your main takeaway, and what did you say to what Michael had to say?
No, I love Michael's passion and his zeal for Senator Vance, but I thought it was an amazing debate. Really enjoyed it. I thought it was much more substantive than the prior debates. I think this debate was a return back to the 2012, 2008 old school Democratic Republican one-on-one debates. It was really enjoyable for me to watch. I think Senator Vance did start off very well. Walz started off a bit slow, a bit shaky, but as the debate continued, you saw Walz come into his own. He began delivering his points very well, and he kind of had Vance on the defensive at certain times of the debate. When we look at issues like healthcare, look at issues like abortion, we look at issues that Trump is very, what would I say, extreme on. Vance spent most of the evening trying to not coddle, but try to bring people back and make people more comfortable to consider voting for Trump. And Walz didn't have to do that for Kamala because Kamala is much more of a moderate candidate in this election. So I think Vance did more to help Trump in this debate, but overall it was 50-50. If I had to say anybody won, I wouldn't say anyone won. I think not many voters were converted by this debate. Rather, people heard what they wanted to hear, and I wouldn't say anyone really took a victory away from this debate.
I want to, continuing on that theme, because after the presidential debate between Vice President Harris and former President Trump, the needle really hasn't moved. The race is still really close, especially in the 7 battleground states, right? And so I'm wondering, will the needle move in this, after this debate? What do you think to that? What do you think, Junior?
I've always thought that a vice presidential debate doesn't do much to move the needle in either direction unless one candidate does very poorly. And neither candidate did poorly last night. They did as well as you would expect. I do think, though, this election will be decided on the economy, will be decided on how voters feel in trusting one candidate or the other, the presidential candidates, Trump or Kamala Harris, to deliver for people. People are really suffering. People are really struggling right now in this economy and in this world right now. The average American, the median American makes about $40,000. The median household is about $65,000. There's a lot of issues across the board, and voters don't want to hear how it happened, but what are you going to do to improve this situation and make life make it to where we can live and afford to live in this country?
Michael.
I'm going to take a tip from last night. I agree with my friend here, okay, that the needle's not going to move much. I mean, vice presidential debates don't really change. no matter who wins. Now, I do think there was a clear winner last night, and I think that was Senator Vance. But we go back to 1988. We look at Lloyd Bentsen wiped the floor with Dan Quayle. We won that election by 7 million votes and 8%. Vice presidential debates don't change. And you're right. The leading issues in this race are the economy and the border. And I think Americans understand. I mean, if you look at polling data on those two issues, former President Trump is leading on both of those issues. And so that debate last night will not change much, except in one area. I think one of the reasons that Governor Walz was selected was some kind of way to have an appeal to men, and particularly men in those battleground states in the Midwest. I don't think he achieved that objective last night. One reason for the selection of Senator Vance was to try to, one of his challenges last night was to try to sort of soften and make an appeal to women. And I do think he did that, and particularly as you mentioned on the issue of abortion, and we'll get to that, I'm sure tonight.
Oh yeah, we've got some clips.
We'll get to that, and so maybe on a few, a percentage here and there, but there won't be a major impact from that debate.
So as you said so correctly, we've got some clips that we want to play. The first one, we will get to abortion, we will get to the economy, but the first one I want to talk about is they were asked about the attack, the missile attack by Iran on Israel, and they were asked a very direct question, and that question centered on whether Israel should do a preemptive strike on Iran's pending nuclear capabilities. Now, neither candidate answered the question directly, but both said they support Israel. But then the question became, what the candidates then talked about was the leadership qualities of the presidential candidates, Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Trump. So let's take a look at this clip.
Now, the person closest to them, Donald Trump, said he's unfit for the highest office. That was Senator Vance. What we've seen out of Vice President Harris is we've seen steady leadership.
Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence. People were afraid of stepping out of line.
Okay, so there we are. That was about that issue. And I'm wondering, Michael, what did you think?
Well, first of all, the question, the original question about giving Israel or supporting Israel's preemptive strike capabilities. Let me answer that.
Iran's, yeah.
Let me answer that one.
Yeah.
That is our longest, dearest, closest ally in the Middle East, and we have an obligation to support Israel. And so I would answer that question maybe a little bit more definitively than the senator did, and the answer is yes. And there's no debate about that. So yes, full stop, period. Going even further, the administration has been sort of wishy-washy in terms of its support for Israel. But Israel's going to move, we're seeing it today probably, Israel's going to move forward doing what it believes it needs to do in order to support itself. And it has a right to do just that. Junior.
Yeah, really good question. And I don't like how neither one of them went directly and answered it, and I understand why. It's a very complicated issue. Senator Vance came out and been more of an anti-war candidate during his time in the Senate and as the vice presidential candidate. Same thing with Governor Walz. Neither one wants to see war. And a preemptive strike on Iran by Israel may lead to a major regional war between Israel, Iran, and then the U.S. because we would come on the support of Israel. Neither candidate, neither party, neither administration wants to see a war between Israel and Iran. It's going to lead to countless lives being taken, destruction of the Middle East, and put us back to what we were dealing with when we had the Iraq invasion. So I don't want to see a preemptive strike. I want to see negotiation. I want to see a leader that will be willing to meet with our adversary, Iran, the same way they'd be willing to meet with our ally, Israel. That's what we need in a leader. That's what we need. And I believe that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are those leaders that will go and negotiate. We'll go and find solutions. We'll get a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Gaza, get a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Lebanon, because it's only peace that can save us. More war, more violence, more destruction will not lead to anything. More violence begets more violence.
The only thing I would add to that, excuse me, that's not our decision to make. That's Israel's decision to make. They have to make a decision about what they believe is in their best interest. And I don't disagree with you that nobody wants war, but that is not America's decision to make. America's obligation is to support Israel.
You know why I will tell you that it is America's decision to make? Because we send them billions upon billions of dollars every year. And if we decided to pull the plug until they came to the negotiation table, you know what's going to happen? They're going to come to that negotiation table because money talks. So we do have a decision to make. We do need to be leaders on the global front because
we're going to do what we did last night.
we just might. And I think this discourse and discussion is really important. But we do have a part to play in this. And if we tell Israel, we need you to negotiate with Iran, negotiate with Lebanon, negotiate with Gaza, and get ceasefire agreements and deals, especially with Lebanon and Gaza, which are ongoing wars right now, that's how we get to peace. It's not through Israel doing a preemptive strike and going tit for tat. All that's going to do is cause more deaths, more destruction, and more carnage in the Middle East.
Let me ask you, because as far as Iran is concerned, their nuclear capability, they're within a week or two, they announced last night. And so I'm wondering, how do you negotiate with somebody who's getting nuclear weapons? And then for Israel, they say October 7th.
Great question. We go back to the nuclear agreement that was signed under President Obama, which stopped Iran from being able to develop a nuclear weapon. They still could have nuclear capabilities for their power plants and all of that, but they couldn't develop a weapon. And that deal was so good that we had international agencies going and visiting Iran monthly to make sure that they were not creating a nuclear weapon. So that's how we do it. We get back there. And Israel has a right to defend themselves. What happened on October 7th last year was detestable, was evil, was criminal. But the defense of yourself must be measured and tempered and not be a whole war against all of your enemies within the Middle East, because all that's going to lead to is more violence and more destruction for Israel in the long run.
Let's talk about the next clip. And this was really some of the most passionate debate. We're talking about the abortion rights issue. And so last night, Walz was talking about how the Democrats, he and Vice President Harris, want to reestablish, they want to offer the protections nationally that Roe v. Wade offered for 52 years, while Senator Vance said this should still be left up to the states. But he also said and acknowledged that the Republicans have some work to do on this issue politically. So let's take a listen.
The catch-all on this is, well, the states will decide what's right for Texas might not be right for Washington. That's not how this works. This is basic human right. We have seen maternal mortality skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world. This is about health care. In Minnesota, we are ranked first in health care for a reason. We trust women. We trust doctors.
My party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms to afford to have babies. On the abortion policy specifically, that we have a big country and it's diverse. And California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona.
All right, Junior, you're up first on this question. What'd you think of that exchange?
I think that Vance is doing whatever he can to soften Trump's stance and the Republican Party's stance on abortion. However, it seems like he's flip-flopping. Just a few months ago, he was in full support for a nationwide abortion ban, I believe up to about 15 weeks. That's how they wanted to do it nationwide. Now, as they look at the political polls and are poll testing and seeing that this is tremendously unpopular with the American people, he's going back to being, let's put it strictly to the states and not have the federal government intervene. I don't think American men or women believe him, trust him on this issue, because they look at his receipts, they look at his tweets, they look at what he's advocated for, and you don't change your mind in the span of 4 months unless you have a political agenda that you're trying to accomplish. I think this abortion issue will affect Republicans negatively in November. The question is, what percentage of voters that are going to the polls, like in Florida, for example, to vote against that abortion ballot measure that they have, but what percentage of them will still vote for Trump? And what percentage of them will go and vote for Kamala because they are just against the Republicans' extremist positions on abortion? I think returning back to Roe v. Wade, codifying Roe v. Wade will be the best solution for this country on a national level. And with that parameter as our basis for law in this country, we were fine for 52 years. Now all of our different states are fighting over this law and fighting over this issue. It's devolving into chaos.
Michael.
I'm going to be real short with this one. But I'm going to start with your comment about you can't change your mind in 4 months unless it's a campaign sort of conversion. And I want to remind you about the vice president's position on fracking, because she just changed her mind.
Back in 2020.
No, she changed her mind recently. But anyway, let's keep going. Part of what the objective was for Senator Vance was to reach out to women, and I think he did that. I said at the top of this conversation that he was relatable and likable, and that was what that answer expressed, his relatability and his likability. In addition to that, there is no federal constitutional right to an abortion, and so that is left to the states. It's in the 10th Amendment of the Constitution that those powers that were not provided to the federal government are allowed and preserved and reserved to the states. So that's where that power should be. We should have the power in Texas to make a different decision than they have in California. And so that was an appropriate response, and that's where we ought to be.
And so let me ask you, because last night the former president pledged on social media that he would veto a national abortion ban. What impact, if any, does that have on this race?
I think it has an impact on the pro-life voters within the Republican Party that are very disappointed in Donald Trump. This Republican National Convention that took place in July was the very first time, and I think over 50 years, that the Republicans stripped from their platform a nationwide abortion ban. Very first time. A lot of core Christian conservatives, evangelical voters, are very disgusted with Trump. I still believe that they'll still go out and vote for him because he is the one that accomplished their goal when it came to getting rid of Roe v. Wade through the Supreme Court. But it will turn off a good amount of those conservative voters that are one-issue voters, because the Republican Party has a lot more one-issue voters than the Democratic Party. And I don't believe that a lot of moderate voters will believe Trump or Vance that they'll be against a nationwide abortion ban. Well, you still have senators like Lindsey Graham, you have federal elected officials that are pushing for it, that will make sure that it's passed through either the House or Senate. Republicans have the majority in either chamber and try to get it through. I don't think Americans believe him, because I've always said I believe who someone is by their works, what they've done. Whatever you've done in the past will let me know what you may do in the future. And Trump got rid of abortion. And I think if he is reelected and the Republicans have a majority in the Senate and the House, they will pass a federal abortion ban. Will it be 15 weeks? Will it be 6 weeks? I don't know, but they'll pass something.
And I also want to talk about the economy. And so we have another clip here. And so let's take a look at this. This, again, focuses on the economy.
She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She had the opportunity to enact all of these great policies, and what she's actually done instead is drive the cost of food higher by 25%, drive the cost of housing higher by about 60%.
Kamala Harris's day one was Donald Trump's failure on COVID that led to the collapse of our economy. We were already before COVID in a manufacturing recession, but 10 million people out of work, largest percentage since the Great Depression.
Okay, Michael, so you're up first on this question. What did you think of this exchange?
I think it was probably one of the better ones between the two of them of the evening. There's no doubt, and Junior mentioned it earlier, that Americans are suffering. Americans are having a hardship. But they're having a hardship during the Biden-Harris administration. They're having a hardship for the last 3.5 years when the vice president has been in office. And so what that tells us and what that demonstrates to us is that they haven't done a good job in making Americans first and putting Americans in the best position to buy bacon and eggs and get a house and pay for college and whatever. So this is an issue that is one of the toughest ones for the vice president in this election, between that and the border.
Junior.
I wouldn't disagree. It's a big issue that the vice president is having to campaign on and address. Let's keep in mind, she is the vice president. She's not the president. She doesn't have a vote in this matter. Rather, she can only do so much. But now, if she is elected, I believe she'll be able to address this. Let's keep in mind, inflation and all of these issues that we're dealing with are global issues that came out of the pandemic. The supply chain crisis that we had, the higher interest rates, these are all things that we're seeing not just in our nation, but globally. A lot of folks don't know, but in Germany, within the last year, they were paying $9 to $10 per liter for a gas. We pay for a gallon. They do the metric system, liters out there. We were paying in Texas about $3.39, which is hard for folks. But let's keep in mind, we were doing better than a lot of these other nations because we are much more energy independent in this country, regardless of whatever Senator Vance and Donald Trump states. Right now, we are producing more oil and gas per capita, not even per capita, than any other country in this world. We are currently producing more energy in this country while being smart on the climate. So I want us to keep in mind, yes, there are issues, but with Kamala Harris elected as president and with Governor Walz elected as vice president, we have better days ahead because these individuals are serious people that will work to address the problems that we're currently working on right now. But there's no silver bullet, and it can't be addressed quickly. These things take time.
So let me ask you, I got two other questions, and that is, I mean, if you look up and down the polls right now, Arizona, Trump up by 1.7%. This is the Real Clear Politics average. In Nevada, Harris up 1.1 percentage point. In Georgia, Trump up 1.5 percentage points. Wisconsin, Harris up by 0.5 percentage point. Michigan, Harris up by 1.7%. Pennsylvania is a tie once again. And North Carolina, Trump up 0.6 percentage points. So, I mean, 1.7 is the biggest margin, right? It's so razor tight. So how is either candidate going to get over the finish line and win this? Junior?
I would say it's speaking to working class, middle class Americans and showing them that you have ideas and solutions to address their issues. And I think when we look at housing, for instance, Harris is really the only candidate that's come up with a plan to address our housing shortage by increasing supply, as well as creating that $25,000 down payment assistance program to add to the other down payment assistance programs that currently exist. She wants to put up a national price gouging bill. And folks may call it price controls, but I would then ask you, talk to the 30 other states in our nation right now, in our union, that have price gouging laws on their books that need to be updated to address current issues that we're having. Harris is not a candidate that has concepts of a plan. Rather, she has plans to address the hardships that Americans are facing. Let's look at health care. Many Americans right now cannot afford health insurance, cannot even get on the ACA because their states never expanded Medicaid, and they're caught in that Medicaid gap or the Medicaid trap that some would state. Harris has a plan to boost up the ACA, cover millions of more people in this country, and make sure that they have not just life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, but quality health care to allow them to enjoy those liberties that we have in this nation. So that's why I think she will end up edging Trump out in probably 5 or 6 out of those 7 or 8 states because she has a plan and has shown to be someone that's knowledgeable of these issues that can't solve them all on day one, but will work hard to address them for the American people.
Michael.
Again, being very, very short and very, very simple. Former President Trump's going to talk about 2 issues, the economy and the border. And they're interrelated. On the economy, this administration, of which she is the vice president, and she is a part of, a significant part of, has failed the American people. It's failed the American people in their ability to get the necessities that they want and make the future that they need. On the border, they failed in the fact that we now have criminals that have come into this country that are harming the American people. The fact that, as we heard last night during this economic discussion that you mentioned, that they are now taking homes from, or getting homes and being part of the demand, that reducing supply of housing, increasing costs, that they are taking some jobs from some Americans. And so that's the way you're going to do that. But the other way is you're going to do blocking and tackling. You're going to have to go out and block it. You're a political consultant. You have to go out and block and tackle. You're going to, for the next 34 days, talk directly to the American people and tell them, and ask them the question that was asked in the last debate. Are you better off today than you were 3.5 years ago?
Okay, so
Could we respond to something just briefly?
Go ahead.
I love how Michael brings up the border. And the border is a major issue. And you know where I'm about to go with this.
Knock yourself out.
Whenever not just Democrats, but Republicans came up with a very tough border bill that was written by, I believe, Senator Langford from Oklahoma. A lot of conservatives supported it. The National Chamber of Commerce, many pro-business organizations supported this border bill, this immigration bill. But then Donald Trump called our Washington congressmen and women and said, I need you to block that bill, because if we get it passed right now, it's going to be advantageous to the Democrats. And this is why I say when American voters look at the Trump administration, both when he was serving as president and the campaign, they don't trust him, because they know that this guy is strictly about politics and about what will be politically advantageous for him, not about what's good for the country. And I'm not saying that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have had a stainless record. No, everyone has done something that's not up to par. But they're not working to destroy things that will help Americans, not after they're elected, but right now. They put their best foot forward and were blocked by the former president because he wanted something politically advantageous for him.
Number one, you weren't in on that conversation, but I'll let you stay with the part that they have some faults, and I'll end it at that one.
All right, so let's go to the last question, and that is on our U.S. Senate race between Senator Ted Cruz and Congressman Colin Allred. And the Cook Political Report has now downgraded the race from a likely Republican to a lean Republican. And so, Junior, what do you make of this development? And, I mean, do you think Allred really has a chance? Still an uphill climb in Texas.
No, Texas is still a state that's not a true swing state yet. And Congressman Allred has done a really good job with his campaign, has put his best foot forward, has raised millions of dollars, and I believe is running a really competitive election. It's just going to come out to, on Election Day and during that early voting period, if people come out and vote. Can you get the voters out? Can you energize the base and then get those moderate swing voters that may not like Trump, may not like Cruz, and want to look at someone else and believe that someone else may bring something to the table? They're not looking for someone that's far left or far right, but a candidate, a senator that's going to work for all Texans, a senator that's not going to go on vacation when we're dealing with crises, a senator that's going to be grounded here and make sure that whatever he's legislating in Washington is to the benefit of not half of Texas, blue Texas or red Texas, but all Texans, and will advocate for us, for our rights, for our freedoms, and to make our lives a little bit better every single day. And I think that's why Colin has a real chance.
Michael.
I've been here 3 different times, and 3 different times you've asked this question at the end of it, and I'll give you the same answer. We are a red state, and a Democrat hadn't won a statewide race in this state for 30 years. Maybe when this young man continues as a political consultant, maybe they will. Democrats haven't won a U.S. Senate race since 1988 when Lloyd Bentsen did so. There's a certain set of values that Texans have. We're not even close to being a swing state or close to being a battleground state. We're red. We're solidly red. And that's not going to change in this election cycle.
Michael Williams, Junior Ezeonu, thank you both so much. We appreciate it. And thank you for watching. I'm politics reporter Jack Fink. Have a great day.
Enjoyed it. Appreciate you, man. Enjoyed it.